Hi, everyone. Welcome to Piercing the Veil.
Good evening, everyone.
We have Professor Robert Bauer tonight for a part 2 of our continuing conversation on vibrations and frequencies. And if I remember right, we're ready to start talking frequencies and getting into what Robert has for us, some more slides and probably some videos. And it's just going to be fun. The last time we had him on, we were just so, I don't know,
in awe.
Everything that he was telling us, and I hope you guys had a chance. I'll go back and watch the first video. If you haven't, make sure you go back either Robert's channel or our channel and check out that video, and then you can add this one to it. It might be a continuing series. I don't know how far we'll go with this, but I know tonight we're talking about frequencies. So we'll go ahead and bring the professor up, and we'll get this going. Welcome.
Hey, Professor.
Oh, aho.
Aho.
Thanks for having me back. I find it, I'm always amazed at how often I get asked back. So I keep thinking that one of these shows is going to be the last time I get on. So, so I really appreciate
you. And especially talking about vibrations and frequencies, because that's what me and Jane always talk about amongst ourselves, and we try to bring it up on shows about consciousness and raising your vibrations and frequencies. And there's even more aspects to it that you've covered, that we don't necessarily get out there to the people.
Right.
Well, it's a big field, and I think that the parts that have gotten the most oxygen are important, but I think that they would make more sense if the foundation of this whole construct had some context to it. Because vibrations and frequencies are everything. Everything in my model, in the way I see things, in my opinion, in my philosophy that I call informatica, everything is information. And the information in the reality that we inhabit and experience, we perceive through a mind that works, it has a certain method to it, it's a certain protocol in the way it works. And so I think it's really important to understand that the information that's out there, whether you see it or not, somebody else is going to see it, you'll see something somebody else doesn't. But all of that is the result of the consciousness that creates the reality that we inhabit and experience. So that consciousness is why we have a universe. It's why we have us. It's why we have everything that we understand and perceive and interact with in reality. Well, so I looked at this, and I went through the theological systems. I had a Christian music ministry back in the 80s, and I dabbled in Hinduism and Buddhism, looked at all of the different religions from a comparative perspective, and tried to analyze what of their systems did I have a resonance with. And I was always filtering it through this one filter. My main filter is explain my reality to me in a way that I can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So one belief system has got its constructs of philosophies, has theirs. Science certainly has theirs. And as wonderful as science is and technology is, and I know because I've been in tech since the punch card days, And that's where I spent over the last 40 years really focused on. A field I stumbled into, had no intent of going into. I was a manufacturing guy. I made things, inversion exercise equipment and stump grinders and brush chippers, aerial lifts, dental hygienic products, medical cameras. And then all of a sudden I found myself making a computer system because I smarted off to the boss. Well, I didn't smart off. I complained to him. It's the way I remember it. He might say it different, but I was running the manufacturing for a company called Sun Process out in Rolling Meadows, Illinois. And we were a materials manufacturer. We didn't make the materials, but we took materials and made things with them. For example, we did the pinball backboard that you see on pinball games.
Okay.
So all of that piece of wood with all of the milling and routing and holes and all the stuff. And then we put those together and then we screen printed them.
Oh.
So, and all kinds of graphics things on plexiglass. We did the backlights for the pinball machines and pizza places and all kinds of stuff. So I was running manufacturing, and I couldn't have any sensible printout from the computer they had that showed me what I had in inventory. It wouldn't tell me what kind of production availability I had. It wouldn't tell me what orders I needed to fill with the stuff that I didn't have to do it with. And so I went to the owner and I said, if you want me to run this, your computer system sucks. And it was the old, for those of us that played with this stuff back then, this is in the mid 80s. The DEC mini computer was the big thing. It was written, the COBOL was the language. And so somebody would write a bunch of stuff, and it had this platter, like 5 or 6 platter disk drive that you'd put into the top and then vacuum seal it.
Huh.
So I said, this thing sucks. I can't, it's garbage in, garbage out. It is the prime example of it. I can't do anything with it. He said, all right, smartass. Here's $250,000. This is in 86, 87.
Oh my gosh.
Here's $250,000. Go find us a new computer system. I went, okay. That sounds like fun. I didn't know anything about it, but I'll go, these new systems, but I'll go have a whack. So I wandered in the wonder of the PC thing that was exploding at that time. Found some Indian guys that had their own consulting company, and they were real smart. Sunil Sekri was the guy that, remember his name, just a great name, but he was smart as shit. And he helped me write a production, accounting, order estimating system, and write it all in a new language at that time called a 4GL, which was called Smartware. So instead of writing computer syntax, you typed out basically a statement, an English statement. So that's when that stuff got started. But anyway, that's how I got into it. He said, go do it. I went and did it. We put together a 40-node network running on ArcNet, not Ethernet, not IP. There was no internet then. There were BBSs and bulletin boards that I dialed into all over the world. And it was very costly, but that's where the action was at that time. And we put on 40 nodes. They were PC-AT machines by Packard Bell. They were 286 gigahertz or megahertz in speed, and they had a 10 meg disk drive and 640K RAM. So that's how I got my introduction into this technology and computer field, with not having any clue that that's something that I would want to do. Yeah. And the next thing I knew, I was not only doing it, but I became one. IR Geezer Geek.
Yeah, back then, I think I started off with an Atari Home 400, then 800, then I went over to the VIC. And then my first real PC was a Packard Bell, and I think it was 286. And then I upgraded to 386, and I thought, screw this. And then I built my own.
I started doing the same thing. and I built my own computers throughout the 90s, and those were, still the tower models. But I mean, how wonderful! I think I got kind of squirreled off there on we were talking about, how things are changing, how important it is. I was going into the point of how things are also crumbling, and one of them is science. And I was saying that, although technology has been very, very good to us, it also has a bunch of negative stuff, and the reason it can't go into, in my opinion, what's stifling it right now is the mentality of the construct of reality that they're using to make the systems. So the big deal right now is AI, right? Everybody's
Right.
It's coming to get us. Well, it's going to take a bite, just like the current technology that this is just an evolution of, already has a bite in all of us. And the real challenge is to mitigate and decentralize and disintermediate the way that this technology is used. And that's really where the magic, in my opinion, is going forward. Open source, decentralized, disintermediated systems are going to correct a whole bunch of friction that is in literally every domain of our social fabric. What doesn't matter if it's governmental, entertainment, academia, the scientific systems, and all the delineations in that community. All of it's falling apart because, unfortunately, the self-imposed track record that they've laid over the last several years is so blatantly obvious that, how can you trust them? And yet they're the ones that are this is another thing that I think is going to fall apart and fall off in this process, is the whole construct of authority. Who has authority over what to lord control over that? And those folks that have had that authority, had the responsibility, and that, in the last 4 or 5 years, it's been very acute. But this stuff has been building for at least the last 2 or 3 decades, in my opinion. The whole concept of thinking and thought, and how is it that you actually function when you engage with a new piece of information, a new metric in the matrix? Because that's all it is. That's all we've got to work with. So thinking about how to think is what I've been thinking about. Been doing a lot of thinking about thinking.
It's a pretty big vicious circle, isn't it?
Well, I think the last few years, a lot of people are thinking differently and waking up more.
How can you not?
Right.
That my point that I've been trying to get out there is that the absurdity has reached a level of it's no longer subterfuge. It's no longer being hidden. It's blatant and out in the open. And some of this craziness that's going on, you look at it and you go, well, it's clear that you know that you're doing this, don't you? you know you're doing this, and it's not going to end well for you, and it's going to be painful for all of us as you keep trying to push this, right? So we're seeing that, again, across all the different societal fabric institutions, the entire infrastructure of the way that we conduct ourselves in society. All of the parts in it are broken, and they're all not functioning anymore. They're, at a minimum, they are suboptimal in their performance. And when you look at just the simple metrics of the yin and the yang, in the positive and the negative, in the harmonious and discord, in the way in which resonance and frequencies are creating these things. That's where, to me, the one of the most important things about what we are talking about, and the whole frequency and vibration component, is that's everything that we know. Mm-hmm. We're just not thinking about it and being aware of it in a way that we're getting the most out of it.
Right.
It's the information is there. A lot of people are aware of it, whether they are consciously aware of it or not. But the experience of resonance and frequency is how we move through our reality. And making sure that you've got your filters cleaned and properly calibrated in your framework of reality that you function through, the window you see, and you decide if you're going outside or not. How that's constructed is, and how you are aware of it and maintain it, is vital to getting through it. And that's not science, that's not philosophy, that's just pure fundamental observational neutrality. It's habit. That's the characteristics that are involved. What are the influences in there? What are the different things that are causing it to behave the way it does? But at a minimum, it just functions like this. And we'll get into that. We get into the metrics of the mind in the deck. But what I'm trying to say, ineffectively, but I'll see if I can bring it home. The functioning reality that we inhabit is experienced through consciousness. There is nothing else outside of that you can call reality, because it's your personal experience. It's the only thing that anybody can ever know is their subjective reality and experience and what it meant to them.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else that maybe have a similar pattern from other people, which is the main way in which we are the first precept, in my opinion, of the way that the mind functions, and that is pattern recognition. We learn through the patterns of these metrics that we're picking up in the matrix, and they have certain distinction about them. Metrics are the delineation, distinction, differentiation that's given using words and symbols to whatever that information is. Because there's stuff, you hear the saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the Gnostic and Hermetic, the view and the mystic schools, mystic arts, is that a symbol is worth 1,000 pictures.
Right.
And that's very intentional, because the symbology, the frequency that is within a particular symbol, within a characteristic geometrical form, that there's a frequency in that. There's a frequency in the way it's designed, in its geometry, and in its visual existence. And there is a sonic frequency to that. There is an emotional frequency to that. There is an imaginative frequency to that. And if you're lucky, in my opinion again, if you have those resonances, then what happens, at least in my experience, my curiosity gets piqued. And the next thing I know, and this is just fundamental process, again, this is not any system, this is just observation. The way I work, and seems most people, is that once that curiosity gets gets kicked off and attenuated and amplified, next thing I know, I'm running around like a madman in this overly fertilized field of imagination that I've been cursed with.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And that's how we function. I mean, it's basic. It's not just me. Everybody I look at and talk to, I can see them going through the same shit that I'm going through, processing what the hell's going on.
Yeah, and it happens in all different fields, whether it's music, medicine, science, music. I mean, I know Jane goes through that process all the time, where she's open to this, and all of a sudden, whether it's collective consciousness or Akashic records or whatever, this starts flowing through her. Then she just starts getting creative and opening up all this stuff through her instruments. And
well, this is reminding me, is this connected like with crop circles? They say crop circles are a geometrical shape. There's energy. Now they're starting to think that, maybe orbs are making them. Well, they're doing it by energy, frequency. Different quick frequencies is going to make a different pattern. So what do you think of that?
I completely agree. I mean, everything that we see is the result of frequencies.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether it's a personal empirical reality and experience that you have, which is what we all have all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we're always in a state. And I was guilty of this back in the 90s, and I'm correcting myself now. Back then, there was two main themes in the Enlightenment movement, if you will, that covered spirituality and all kinds of stuff, New Age. And one of them was you have to seek the one. You have to find the one. Hell, in Tower of Power is what is hip. They said, in order to find you went and found yourself a guru.
Yeah.
I got that backwards, but the point is that that was the thinking, was that you had to go find this, connect with the one. And what I've come to realize is that you already are the one, because you are a part of and from the one.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no going and looking. There's, if anything, the search should be within what makes you function, makes you resonate. What are your proclivities? What are your preferences, your peccadillos? What are things that you are adverse to? How does all of that work? And I think the unfortunate thing is there's been this tsunami of all of this. Again, one of my pet peeves, when we grew up, do you remember we were taught how to think? You had to figure out how to be accountable, how to be responsible, how to get your butt off of whatever and go do something, go learn something. There was hey, go learn, and you'll learn how to think as you do these things. Well, in my opinion, that's been replaced with what to think, and that's been a parasite that's been has completely infected the academic system.
Right.
Now
you said, to bring up your show last night with Heidi. You talked about the dogma and the teachers and all the college professors, and I thought, while you guys are doing your show, I thought the same thing. Is like, when I went to college, or whether it was high school or whatever, once I started thinking outside the box, their dogma started falling apart, and the teachers could not get it back on track. I mean, there was just a lot of stuff they couldn't answer, and they tried to bring you back to the dogma. But as soon as you go outside the box, you just throw their whole program out the window, and they don't know how to react.
Yeah, and that's part of the point. A great example of the point I was trying to make about how blatantly obvious the incompetence is. I mean, when I think what's happening is the amount of information that's contrary to the official narrative, that what I've called the carefully crafted and curated narrative. The information is becoming available demonstrating those things to be just not only slightly wrong, but in most cases completely wrong. A lot of the stuff that people are seeing is turning out to be 180 degrees of what they thought and what they were taught to thought.
Right.
And so that's unraveling on its own. To me, it's a self-inflicted implosion. And it's from an authoritative perspective. It's from people that have been given some type of lofty responsibility of authority by those who have said, well, we need somebody to do this, so you do it. And now all the rest of the people that come through have been Ohio gozaimasu by the authority that's been planted in that perch. I mean, it's all of that is just broken beyond repair. There's nothing, in my opinion, that's salvageable other than the technology infrastructure, which is also going to get a major upgrade, but it can hang through this transition, I think. So we're seeing, somebody said, they said, well, what do you think is going to happen in 2024? And I said, well, what I'd like to see is a brigade of bulldozers just bearing down on all of the infrastructure and just scraping the surface clean. Just scoop it all up and push it out into a pile. Have a big bonfire, get your guitars and your favorite libation, and get out there and have fun and celebrate that all that shit's gone, because tomorrow you got to get to work and put it together again and rebuild it. Yeah. All of the technologies, the most important ones, water, energy, and communication, all of them are available now. That if you had each one of these in the palm of your hand, you can have all the water you need, all the energy you need, and all the communication you need in the palm of your hand. Completely different science than physics that it's not completely different, but it's closer to the frequency physics that I think it needs to be and will evolve into. So going back to the geometry, Jane, we were talking about the experiences that you've had. Oh, I have.
Did you lose your earpiece?
No, I have a video playing in my ear. There we go.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was like, okay. And it was actually Kymatica by Ben Stewart, which, if you haven't seen it, highly recommend. It's up on both of my channels. I don't know. I thought I had that off somewhere. But anyway, the transformative disruption that's occurring now, and again, this is in my view, in my opinion, totally my subjective perspective. The upgrade that's about to happen to the infrastructure and the way that the infrastructure is maintained and administered, all of that is going to change dramatically over the next 5 to 10 years in particular. But the next couple of years, I think, is when this brigade of bulldozers is going to start showing up. And it's probably going to be filled with a bunch of pissed off peeps who have been lied to for a long time. But the most of the lies that are really getting under their, making burrs under saddles, is the shit that they've done in the last 4 to 5 years.
Yep.
It has just been so blatantly absurd that I don't know. I mean, there are people that don't pay attention and there are people that do. And it seems like the people that, at least I know of, that are making a very empirical attempt at trying to be aware and see what's going on. I mean, it's not we used to be hard for us to talk about it. Yeah. We used to have, we had fewer friends and family, and people just kind of started going, just let him go off over there and do his thing. And now you're getting more. Hey, did you see that on the news the other day? Wasn't that something you were talking about, like, I don't know, several years ago? Yeah. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that, which is awesome. It's just going to be a messy period between now and it's not going to take the entire scraping of the infrastructure to get the new stuff going. There'll be, I think, one of these crossfades of bringing in the new as the old is going out, and I kind of think we're in that spot right now. We're in that triangle in the
spot.
middle. Well, I wouldn't call it sweet, but it is a spot.
But I mean, where the two vortexes come together. I mean, I was thinking that the other day, looking back on our last show, when we talked about how everybody's becoming awake and receiving this data, whether, like we talked about, collective consciousness as flowing through, whether creative or scientific or whatever. And then we have the internet now and all these groups and chats and messages that we can communicate more than what originally was set up, letters and emails or however, snail mail. Now
smoke signals.
Everybody's getting the word out there, and it's just like backfiring on whether it's societal or the government or whatever you want. Like you talked about last time, their systems are starting to fail because everybody's is aware of all this stuff. Then you
Yep.
brought up a block and chain system that's going to have to fix this and rearrange their whatever their systems.
Well, the thing that is really important, and I think this is one of the other things that the awareness thereof is coming to it's getting much more amplified, which it needs to.
Yeah.
And that is data. Everything is data. It's information. It's one of the constructs of Informatica in my philosophy that I call Informatica. So right now, all of our data, everything that each one of us does individually, is scattered across dozens, if not hundreds, of independent systems that we have no ownership of, we only have access to it if it's an account that we remember the password to.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So our data is everywhere. And what most people don't realize is that wherever your data is, whoever has that spot where your data sits, they own the data that's sitting in their spot.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole, NSA thing and spying thing and, watching everything and, there's half a dozen or more TLA agencies out there and some that are outside it. They're FLAs and even more. They've been gathering this data for a long, long time. So the key is to get control of that data.
Mm.
Right now, we don't have control over that data. We think we do, but we don't. It's through a bunch of intermediaries, service providers, communication services. All this shit is scattered all over the place. So the coming technology in this thing that is called blockchain, or the more cool way to say it is distributed ledger technology, which is nothing more than a spreadsheet. And people don't realize that. It's just a record. It's like, if you know what a spreadsheet is, you got rows and columns. It's just one row of data, another row of data, and they're all hashed and encrypted and linked to one another. So you can't go back and erase or change one because the entire chain would collapse.
Right.
Right? So, and this is actually something that I'm working on. I just can't get away from this tech stuff. So, the key to the future is data, the sovereignty and provenance of that data. And if you have sovereignty and provenance over the data, then you control it. So getting control of self, the sovereignty of self, is one way I put it, is the goal, and the technology is here to do that now. And that's in this blockchain thing. Now, most people are more familiar with cryptocurrencies.
Right.
And, there's a lot of oxygen getting sucked out of the air in that little group or big group. The only reason that cryptocurrencies exist is because of the blockchain. So the architecture and the infrastructure that is deployed when you do a blockchain is by itself completely secure. And whoever puts that first block of data in with the attributes of ownership onto the blockchain forever owns it. Nobody can change it. So getting the control, and this is one of the shows I'm relaunching the Nextcast. I've got the website up, and I've got my YouTube channel up, and I've got it on Rumble too, and a Facebook. But I took some of the old shows that I did back in 2019, and because I haven't looked at them, I just they went up there, and then so I thought, well, I got to make sure all my Nexus stuff is on the new channel. So I found one I'd forgotten about. I did back in, I think it was in September of 2019, but it was your identity is your currency.
Right.
And the whole premise was that exactly what I'm talking about now. So that's 4 years ago, almost 5. That's what we're seeing unfold before our eyes and minds. We're seeing this transformation of an understanding of reality, how it works. The reason that data is important is because that's how we get things done, how we go about doing things. You need information to go be in reality, unless you've jumped off grid, but you still want to have a tap into that identity access as you need it to go access the system and then get out. So that transformation is, in my opinion, has begun. We're seeing the cracks in the narrative that has maintained control over this old system just all over the place. And one of the best ways to find it or to see it is listen to the people that are saying that is wrong, stay away from that, that needs to go away. Go in that direction. Go find what they're telling you shouldn't be listening to, giving credence to, giving platform, voice, whatever.
Yep.
Those are the ones you want to go check out. Because if people get that ground off and that clearly upset and agitated and triggered by the thoughts or the sound or the words that is being said, that's their problem. The idea of a free market and capitalism at its core is the free exchange of enterprise, of commerce. And one of the most important things, again, one of the areas and the words that I think is not getting the due that it deserves, but it's coming around, is value. What the hell is value? How do you define the value of something? It's all very subjective depending on what it is. But at the end of the day, that's how everything gets done, is that there's an exchange that's required, and the value, the energy, the currency. If you think of our monetary system as it's called a currency, but it is an energy currency. Mm-hmm. It's the energy exchange of value that's agreed upon by parties that want to engage in the exchange of value.
Right.
Goods, services, whatever, and however they're doing it. Oddly enough, in my opinion, the sovereignty of being able to have that one-to-one exchange, that peer-to-peer exchange, I don't need a bank to go do business with you. I don't need a state. I don't need anything other than my sovereignty and your sovereignty agreeing on the value of exchange, or the exchange of value that we agree on. If you think about it, back, before there was this thing called currency, or having some type of cash or coinage value, before any of that became a norm in these organized little fiefdoms and kingdoms and so forth all around, it was barter straight up. I got chickens, you got pigs. Here's the number we agree on. We get it done. We shake hands, we go. That's what the transaction of value should be like. Now, in our modern society, we clearly have things that need to have some kind of guardrails on them in order for a group or, some type of collective certification, something. I mean, you're going to have some of that. But you can also do that on the blockchain, and then you know for sure whether something has been certified or not. It's been registered or not. It's gone through the proper attribute stamps and approvals that it needs to, based on this self-organizing collective's rules. When we'd had villages and even in tribes today in different parts of the world, you have little cultures and civilizations that have been their little enclave and interacted with other similar groups for centuries.
Right.
How did they get along and do things together? They bartered.
Mm-hmm.
So this technology has the ability to enable that for the global pop and for all humanity. So if you have the ability to provide security, auditability, trustless, which is one of the words that is used to define the blockchain, secure, it can't be hacked, it can't be broken, you can't reverse it. It's done. You got to keep adding or changing or adding, make a new one. If you took that type of data architecture, information architecture, and infrastructure, and had free water, free energy, and free communication, I think we'd all find a whole lot of really cool things to do that are much more productive and positive for everyone. Think of all of the strife and the friction and the conflict and the chaos that goes on because of the systems that people live in. There's initially probably a carefully crafted, for the right reasons or the most right reasons, system that is just bursting at the seams. It can't function with the volume and the velocity and the changes in the way that things can get done. So the change in the way things are looked at that need to get done are going to be much more efficient and streamlined in the future because of the technologies that I just mentioned. So the redefinition of even all the way to the point of governments is going to change. That's further down the road because it's going to be a painful one to root out.
Right.
But the system will facilitate that, this new way, because there'll be so many different things that have been optimized and are using this new technology that it provides all of the services, all the things that you need to do to have a commerce, a financial, a monetized transaction between you and whoever the hell you want. That freedom is going to help assist humanity go to the next level. But that's just me.
Right. Well, just like you're talking about in the barter system or even the trade routes. I mean, that's just going to open up a whole bunch of avenues for every individual.
I mean, imagine, we're seeing an incredible amount, just like what we're doing right now. The advent, I think, technology's been phenomenal. It's provided just an amazing experience for us to do things like we're doing now. But the amount of what we're seeing, how people like us getting on and having our own conversation and putting it out as a show, just like everybody else, it's just like the big boys, the legacy media. We're doing the same thing that, hell, they couldn't even get right for the last few years because most of it is crap, aside from the content, because that's always crap. But I mean, some of the production on some of these people, I'm going, really? And you work for who again? They couldn't send an assistant in to help you get that cleaned up and make it look right. So, so I think as we see this, all these we see the current stuff falling apart, and we see this new technology emerging out of it, kind of through it,
Kind of. Right.
right?
Kinda.
And it has the ability, again, in my opinion, to emerge out past it. It'll go out and consume the blob as the blob continues to deteriorate. Again, in my opinion. But I think it's going to be just absolutely awesome. The creativity that we're seeing just with, again, like what we're doing, the growth of not just the internet, particularly YouTube. I'm going to give YouTube all of the props that they deserve. It is, to me, one of the most important technological innovations over the last 15 years, 20 years. Because you can find anything you want to need to know on YouTube.
Yep.
Oh, broke a hangnail. Oh, look at that. Oh, I lost power to my flux capacitor. I bet there's a video on that.
Yep.
So that is giving people more information, more metrics in the matrix to consider as they think about and walk about and wander about the reality that they inhabit. And that's opened a lot of minds. It's changed a lot of minds. It's enhanced and added to different thoughts and knowledge, skill sets, talents, proclivities. Again, what are your preferences? What is it that you are resonating with? And to your point about the art, I mean, arts is going to go ape, in my opinion. What we're seeing now is stuff that needs to get out of the way, needs to get out there. It's kind of like the test stuff, and it's not, it's not what people who become very serious about it are going to be putting out. The enablement of being able to express your creativity, a lot of which people will go, I didn't even know I could do that. And there's a lot of that going on now. But yes, the expression of the self-actualized individual is going to go ape, and it's going to be awesome. And I think people not only need to be aware of it and prepared for it, but there's a lot of people out there going to go through some thinking going, I think I might want to go have me some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Especially now, like you said, once we get the blockchain in place, then you have a good foundation to springboard off of, whichever direction you want to go.
Well, that's, again, my opinion, and I've built a project called System X Technologies, and it takes that concept that we were talking about with the blockchain, digital ledger technology or distributed ledger technology, and I'm redefining how the business systems are designed to that fundamental thing that I was talking about with just being able to do the exchange of value to a peer-to-peer basis. So the system I've designed facilitates that. But it's also because it is a good evolution of the technology. It's in its early stages, got lots of problems, but this whole AI thing is wrong on so many levels. And again, just like I like to do, I go right to the nut of the nugget, look at the fundamental thing, and this first thing is the linguistics, what words you're using, artificial and intelligence. Where did you come up with that? Is this just another example of, and I know, because I are one, geezer geeks not having any imagination, not hiring a marketing person, go, hey, got any slick stuff we can call this? So, first of all, it's not artificial. The artificial is the wrong word because it's also not intelligence. That's another wrong word. If people understood how this actually works, and there's a real simple metaphor from my perspective of how this works that everybody is mostly familiar with, and that is a search engine. Google, Bing, Brave, Tusk, all whatever.
Right.
That's a search engine. What do? You ask it a question, and it goes and finds the stuff that you asked about. At least gives you links. But we've also had this AI assistant, what I call assisted intelligence, in the form of Siri and Bixby and Alexa. What do you do with those? You ask it a question, it goes and says, I have found the following blah, in whatever language or voice that you have selected because you like the way I personally like Jarvis on Iron Man. That slight English, erudite kind of, something about that works for me. But anyway, we've had what an AI system, what ChatGPT does, we've had for the last 2 decades. This is nothing more than the next iteration of that. I did a rant on my YouTube channel about AI and the hype, hyperbole, fuss and muss, and sex and sizzle. Because I don't know if anybody has heard about this, but not only has the New York Times is suing ChatGPT for content, their Microsoft is now getting sued as well.
Huh.
Because they're using ChatGPT, right?
Right.
And they're also apparently rumoring to go off and take it to the whole nother level and build some tens of billions of dollars of infrastructure across the Midwest in the next few years. They're dumping billions apparently. But all of that, here's the basic components of the way AI works. And then I'll explain why it will never become sentient and never come for us from a intentional perspective. You can program it to come after you. We got that already with drones and the robots we got. You program it, go get that and knock it out. Okay, done. But the way these things work is it's based on a concept called natural language processing, NLP, not to be confused with neuro-linguistic programming, which is one of the psychological models, right? So natural language processing, what they've done is they've taken that, what you would put in a search bar or speak to your Siri, and they've now made this massive new model of how to interpret that. So they've put in the ability to identify nuance and reference, different traits and things. But basically, once it does its little thing, saying, well, he said this word tree, and then this other word growing, and this other word in a region. So it takes those and it says, let's package that up. Let's throw it onto this thing called a neural network. Neural network, a whole thing that is out there running amok in through pipes and lines and waves and even light, which is where the real breakthrough is, in my opinion, and that's coming soon. But it goes out through this thing called a neural network that is then within its network has these data servers, data models, and there's a shitload of them. And so they call that a large language model. So they take what you asked, craft it up, and try to say, this is probably what he's looking for. Let's go look for that through the neural net out over to the large language models. And then what our programming says is find that word and this word and how often it's close to it. Give me those references. Look at the other words. So it does all this massive linguistics across databases. So it's all word-based. It's all language-based. And when we get into the show and tell, we'll get into why that is precisely where the problem is and where also the opportunity is. again, in my opinion. So that's all it does. And the prompt scripting language is software. The neural network is a combination of software and network, hardware, but it's all software connected. And the large language models are a bunch of disks or solid-state drives of information that's stored across God knows where. And as long as it's the neural net can see it, it'll go get it.
Right.
That's all it does. You can't. There is no way, and that's another reason why the linguistic thing really twerks my nose. I was going to say something else, but it all gets twerked. Let's just say that, because these words are they're wrong, and the wrong words don't lead you to the right thinking.
Right.
So I call but my model in my System X technologies for the future is a distributed ledger tech blockchain across homogenized self-organizing communities. And that's going to naturally form in a number of different ways. But at a minimum, a self-organizing collective or community are a bunch of people who are like-minded. They have the same interests. You have Woodworkers Guild. And this goes all the way up to where I think one of the real things that are low-hanging fruit, but it is just huge and ripe, is the content creators that we were talking about. Now, I'll get back into that. But the ability to have a group of people that can conduct their transactions amongst themselves securely without having anybody else involved. There's no banks. There's no just these people have a set of rules. In order to join the collective, it's written in a smart contract. That smart contract lays out the entrance and exit of said collective and how you conduct yourself when you're in the collective. And it's open source, means everybody can look at it. So there is the transparency, which is one of the big things that all of the major stuff you hear in the legacy crap feed about politics and even to the financials, but all of that stuff is a bunch of pablum and BS that's created by the system that is broken. So it can't get out of its own way. So when you see what they are feeding you, then you can go, well, your track record sucks. I've been watching you for a long time, and you ain't got shit right for a long time. And in fact, you've outright lied about a bunch of stuff. So I don't know. I'm not going to buy your Collapsamol pharmaceutical for some cobbed together set of symptoms of which I might have one or two, but I don't have all 10 of those.
Right.
And then when I heard the precautions at the end, something about having swelling on my perineum and leaky gut, and I'm going, what? You want me to risk what?
Yep.
So this system is designed to take the sovereignty, security, and the responsibility, authority, and execution of data to the person, to the individual. You have a birth certificate with a number. You have a social security number, and this is the States, for those of you that aren't here, but you all got something like this. You have a birth certificate, you got a driver's license, you got certificates, you got insurance numbers, policy numbers, you got all kinds of stuff everywhere. And you don't control any of it.
Right.
Right.
Especially if you forget your password. So this will change all of that. The artificial intelligence component becomes an assisted intelligence, And it's actually an intelligent assistant, not an assisted intelligence. And it will be customized to the data that you want it to have access to. And this is another thing that people don't realize. The current AI tools, there's two characteristics about them. One, they're only current up through, I think, April of last year. So any data, any new stuff that has happened since then is not going to be in those large language model databases on the neural network that your natural language programming script said go find. It's not there. So it can't find that. The other thing that is, it is always static data. Whenever it goes and makes a run, it just grabs a snapshot of the state of the system at that point. Now, as soon as it takes that snapshot, something else could happen, but it ain't going to have that because it's not a real-time access.
Right.
It's a go get and go retrieve, right? So you can't put any kind of, and we're already seeing, and this is actually to the opposite of what I'm saying, or at least proves it in the negative way. You go to do any of these any of these AI systems that are out there. And there's some really good ones and some really cool open source personal ones, which I think is going to be the future. But if you go to use any of the public ones that are out there, even Grok, which does a great job, Musk's AI on the X platform, you go ask that to go to ChatGPT and say, give me President Biden's greatest hits, and it'll spit out 20 or 30 pages of whatever it thinks it's found, and
Right.
you're going to look at it and go, what? And then you turn around and say, give me Trump's greatest hits. And it will come back and say, we are sorry, we cannot process information of that controversial. Okay, so who programmed that in there? Because
Yeah,
I'll
who put
bet
the
you dollars
coders?
to donuts, there's all kinds of stuff out there that's available on the interwebs that would fall into answering that prompt. It would be data whether the data was right or wrong, just like in the 20-page essay that you just got on the greatest hits from the current guy, and you go, what? So the bias is being programmed in, meaning that's one of the problems of it, is that it's only designed, it will only work as well as it's been programmed. It'll only work as well as whoever programmed it decides that they want it to work. Now, just without even knowing the technical and scientific and even the physics components of what a sentient machine might be able to do and look like, you're telling me that the problems that we have with AI is based on the people that are programming it? Okay. And it's because they're telling you what you can, they're putting guardrails around what you can ask and what information you can get.
Right.
Well, that's not happening. I mean, what is the reason for that? You start asking, the fundamental observational neutrality questions. And that's one of the things, circling back, that I think is just absolutely awesome that we're seeing is people are starting to learn that asking questions is much more important than it used to be. And they're also realizing that asking the right questions is even more important.
Right.
So that is, I think, one of the really cool things that we're seeing. There's a lot of heads exploding, and it's leaving a mess around wherever, because people are finding out that what they thought was real and true is questionable at best. And ergo, you start asking questions when things become questionable. At least that's how I work.
Right.
Do we lose Jane?
just for this momentarily, she just had to do something with the animals.
I'm making coffee.
Oh, you're making coffee.
I'll take mine straight, no chaser. Yeah, I'm kind of a little curious now. I haven't heard my mutts for a while, and usually my youngest one, or my smallest one, she's actually the oldest. When she's quiet, then I start getting suspicious because she's usually not quiet.
So where are we at on your model right now? Where are we?
Well, we kind of
Covered
went
the
all over the
recap
place
pretty
there.
well.
Yeah, I apologize for not getting to that sooner, but that was apparently needed to get out. So thank you for your indulgence.
Yeah.
Now to the good stuff.
Well, that's debatable. We'll find out here.
Now we're going to school. There will be a pop quiz at the end of the show.
Let's see if I can get this.
Now it's time for the
Okay.
presentation.
Now it's like, well, make sure you have your beverage and your favorite smoke of choice because the show's about to start.
All right.
Okay, let's see if I can. Let's see. Sure. No, is it screen? Or is it the application? There it is. Okay, so I can't. Well, we'll go ahead and do this for now. It says that I can't show, or I can't play the audio when I'm sharing the application.
Really?
Yeah, which we won't really need till if we get to the videos. Okay. So this is a continuation of part one, the framework that we started on the last show.
Would you like this to be full screen or us on top or just like we are now, or how would you like this to be presented?
Whatever's more comfortable for you. If the viewers have a preference, yeah, that looks great.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah, that way I don't have to look at me.
Oh, all right. I thought that way maybe they could read the screen better what's coming across.
Let's see here. Hold on here. Yeah, this might even, okay. So Informatica is my concept of reality. The way it's been formed over the last 4 or 5 years after a long search of trying to find things that explained my experience to me. Well, we were talking about earlier. So I call it Informatica, and it's the metrics in the matrix. So since we went through this on the previous show, I'll try to do a brief overview here, and then we'll get into the frequency piece. Oh, I got to be over here. Yep. Do you see my little laser pointer?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
This
He's cool.
technology's yeah, this technology's awesome. Okay. So we're going to talk about Informatica a little bit, then the metrics of measurement, and then the matrix of consciousness, which is where where we find the metrics. Matrix is in our mind. It's in this thing that we experience as consciousness, but on an individual basis. So the definition of Informatica is the information and the consciousness experience that make up the components of reality. And I'm working on these, trying to get them as concise and precise as possible. So if anything doesn't make any sense or it needs clarification, please do not hesitate to inform the presenter, because I need some help.
All right.
Okay, so in the way that we think about language and words, we typically have two delineations of verb and noun in our language model. And the verb of Informatica is the manifestation process of information, the information becoming, unfolding, becoming what it is, manifesting and materializing into the materium of the reality we inhabit. So that's the process of it, is the action. It's a verb. The noun is what it has become, the information that has manifested. So it has a dual polarity, if you will, which is one of the themes in the Informatica framework. So the nature and habits of consciousness, and this is where the observational reality and the neutrality of that observation is important. So in this model, consciousness creates everything. And how is that arrived at? Well, it has attributes, it has characteristics, it has a nature and habit of the way that we experience it. Seems to be in constant creation. There seems to be a constant unfolding and forward motion of this consciousness thing that we experience. It is where energy, it expresses its motion through this thing called energy, or what we call energy, and that energy is made up of frequencies. It's always in motion, again, for the constant creation. It has cycles within cycles, and there are patterns in those cycles. And in its constant motion forward in creation, it's always seeking novelty, newness, more. So it's subjective to the observer's experience, and it is the arena of imagination, possibilities, potentials, and probabilities. That's where all the magic is. Make sense so far?
Yep.
Sounds good. I like the laser pointer.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm getting used to dragging it around here. So we have a metrics of measurement. We measure everything, and how we measure the metrics, or how we measure the metrics themselves, is how we define the experiential reality we inhabit. And therefore it's how we react and how we navigate the reality that we encounter and experience. So when you think about it, you can think of, well, I'm looking at the air and it doesn't have any numbers in it. Well, yeah, it does. There's constructs of math around that, but when you look at it, do you see math? No. But is there math that can define it as a metrics? Yes. And at a minimum, it's been given a name called the air or atmosphere. Boom, there's a metric. So the point here is that all of it is information, everything that we experience in our mind and with both our ethereal expression, our ethereal self, which is where the mind and consciousness is, and what we experience in the materium, the body side. All of that are the sensors that we gather information for, and where we get it from is the matrix, and what we're getting is the metrics that's in that matrix. So we are experiencing reality with a whole bunch of patterns of stuff. Some of it's got characteristics like math that we know about. Others of it is just, oh man, is that a good cup of coffee? So it's that simple. Metrology is the category of knowledge domains that's been given to the measurement of things, and that's where the records are kept. So there's a group of people, authority, like we were talking about earlier, that lord over the category of metrology. And that's where all the models, math, and machines are all keeping this information. Now, what's interesting is there's a section in the metrology called the constants. And those include things like the speed of light, gravitational force, thermodynamics. And those have these things, these places in the metrology department, and it's called constants, meaning these things never change. Well, unfortunately for them, that isn't true. The information that's available on each one of them demonstrates that there is clearly nothing that is constant. In fact, the only constant is change. But when you base your science and your thinking on things that you think are one way and they aren't, then at a minimum, you've limited the possibility and the potential of what you're trying to do. And at a maximum, you've polluted it to where you're not going to get shit for it. Or what you're going to get is not going to be anything like what reality is showing you. And we'll just say, example, hashtag climate change. So what happens when you get into the matrix of the conscious mind? Because that's where all the magic is. That's where all the really cool stuff is. And that's where everybody is when we are experiencing reality. When we look at our meat suits in the mirror, we only see what and experience what the senses, the sensory systems that we have in our biological meat suit can pick up. They've been tuned to certain frequencies, which is what we're going to get into here. But in reality, if we could see all of the stuff that's going on both outside of us as well as within, we'd have a totally different perspective of the meat suit in the mirror. We'd really see the energy suit of the Ethereum. So this image kind of gets that across. So what is the matrix of the conscious mind? Well, one of the things that I've observed trying to find the things that resonate with my experience is that there seems to be a common consciousness that we all share. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing now. Even though our individual consciousness is in and of itself unique. It is an individual frequency stamp, an individual signature of the frequency fields, the infinite frequency fields of energy. That is the way consciousness expresses itself. So the whole concept of consciousness, how did people know that everything was conscious, or they had a perception of consciousness, that everything was alive? And that's one of the important things that people don't really appreciate. And if they did, they would be asking even more questions, is that prior to the Enlightenment period, when Descartes and Newton and the boys were fundamentally changing the way that science was thought. In fact, before the sciences were named as they are now, it was actually called natural philosophy, and science was actually within the theologies, the church, within the secret societies and the mystery schools, and alchemy was one of those components, which we'll get into. And all of that was based on an experience of consciousness. So all up until about 1700, particularly in the Western world, because it's certainly not true in other parts of the country or other parts of the globe and in specific countries, because they have their own belief system about reality. But in the Western thinking and our society, they basically said, no, everything is mechanistic. Everything is a machine. The body's a machine, the animals are machines, plants are machines, planets are machines, stars are machines, galaxies are machines. Everything's mechanistic. having no purpose, having no sense of self, having no consciousness. It's all just God being this grand engineer and mathematician, put it all together and then hit the start button, and it stayed the same. That's where the scientific, one of the dogmas in science is the conservation of matter and energy, that it can neither can be neither destroyed or created. Well, that's got all kinds of problems, particularly with the James Webb recent data that it got on looking back across the known or visible universe and pushing the Big Bang timeline over two, up to from 13 to 25 billion, and they've just gotten started. So apparently the math, the models, and men and machines that went into coming up with the Big Bang didn't have either the right data, the wrong data, or something, but at a minimum it needs to be reevaluated because it's wrong. And then when they observed that the universe is not only expanding, but it's also accelerating in the 90s, all of a sudden, well, clearly there's more matter and energy being created. And, then there was the little side trip of dark energy and dark matter to make up for the 90+% of the observations that they were seeing that didn't match the math that they had done. So just at a fundamental level, the experience of consciousness was hijacked, and it was removed from the natural world that we observe and that all of our ancestors for millennia, tens of thousands of years, all perceived that everything was life. Everything was organic. It was an organism unto itself. And that was just dealt a massive blow to the experience of the individual and to humanity. And oddly enough, as part of the rise of that science was to countermand the church, so Descartes said, nature and man and the earth and all of that, we understand the mind of God because we know math now. So we own that. And all this angels, gods, and the consciousness, mind of man, will give that to the church. And the church can have lord over that. Pun intended. So what's happened now is that what science was trying to do to religion back then, they've done to themselves now. And they've basically become scientism. This is the point that I was making a minute ago. Civilizations around the world saw themselves and everything around them as conscious. Wind, rain, thunder, clouds, air, sun, moon, planets, stars, comets, all of it had some degree of consciousness. It was alive. But that's not how our current systems in science see reality. They only see everything what's typically referred to as a grit model. Basically billiard balls. Hold on one second here. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Loud and
Sounds
clear.
good.
Okay. I thought I had a little audio drop out there. So what's also very interesting to me is that, I get into discussions with physicists and these people that are, some science degree, some TLA tattooed on the ass end of their name. And they think they know a whole bunch of stuff, which they do, about a very small and very narrow band of information. But you throw anything in there that gives them a chance to stop and think, it's amazing how much consternation, frustration, anxiousness, anger that causes people to well up in. So when you see, one of the things is the argument or people get into about, they'll say, which is more accurate, astrology or astronomy? And all of the astronomy people and science folks will go, astronomy is real, astrology is superstitious. It's some pseudo nonsense. And when you tell them, hey, well, did you know that astrology is dependent on astronomy? And in all civilizations, of all the information that we have ever collected, it's the oldest data set. People were using
Right.
how stars and planets and things and cycles move long before you guys even called it astronomy. It's the oldest data set. And they kind of go, it's funny to watch. So I think one of the important things, this gets into how the mind, the process of the mind works. These are the 7 basic Hermetic principles from the Kabbalion. And these, again, are just based on nothing more than observation. It's based on mentalism, that the universe is mental. And you can make a lot of arguments for that. The correspondence concept, as above, so below. A lot of people have heard that. Vibration, nothing rests. Everything moves, everything vibrates.
Right.
Polarity, everything is dual, and everything has poles of opposites. Rhythm, everything is in a flowing motion. These cycles have a timbre, they have a rhythm to them. And some are extremely long, others are just, I mean, if you got down and looked at it from the frequency perspective, there is a rhythm within the frequency sets. Cause and effect, every cause has an effect, and every effect has a cause. That's a really important thing because it applies to the polarity and the vibration and the correspondence that happens in mentalism, in the mind. And then everything is gendered. There's a masculine and a feminine aspect to everything. And you see that all around in nature. Chinese philosophy, the I Ching, and I became a follower of Taoism back in the mid-90s when I learned Tai Chi and became an instructor. And it resonated, its explanation of reality resonated the most across all of the different experiences I have than any other system that I've seen. And the yin and the yang, the polarity, the masculine and feminine, these are all characteristics of the energy that is the result of consciousness. So I think these are really good, simple, short list of things to think about as far as how you are thinking about reality and engaging with it. So when we do that, how does that work? Well, there's a process that our minds work through. And it's everywhere. And unless you stop and think about it, you don't realize that this is the pattern of consciousness and the process of it. First thing is pattern recognition. We learn things through analogies and metaphors, references to other things, and how they either intersect or don't, what mappings to different characteristics between things. That's just how we learn. It's how we absorb the patterns. And when we absorb them, whether we don't really realize it most of the time as much as we should, but we resonate with it, which develops preferences, biases, prejudices, predilections, peccadillos, all those things that describe our affinity or our proclivity or our interest in something. And then once we filter through those preferences and those biases and resonances, we notice the pulse, the rhythm, and the vibration of them. And we're not necessarily consciously doing this, but that's what we're doing. My point is, if we were conscious of doing this, we'd do it a lot better, and we get better results. And then this magic thing happens where no hardware or software will ever be able to to do, these next two in particular. The predictive, potentiality, portend, and projection. What I was saying earlier about one of the things that just grinds my goat about the whole '90s Enlightenment and the New Age movement and all that. I was mentioning, connecting to the one, finding the one, in pursuit of the one. When you don't have to do that because you are the one, and you need to realize you're a frequency stamp of the energy fields from consciousness. You are a unique instant of that energy. And once you are stamped, you continue on with all the other energies. Because it's in a constant motion of flow and forward and creating and looking for novelty. So the other thing that really got me was everybody saying, you got to be in the now. Yeah, you got to stop. You got to be in the now. And what they were really trying to say is be present, because the now is you're never in the now, you're always in the next. You're always thinking about and engaging with the information you have and then how you're going to move forward in it. So there's no now, there's only next in this model. And that's the reality of how we actually function. And again, there's no science, there's no theology, there's no philosophy. It's just an observation. That's how it works. You can wrap whatever idea, axiom, whatever around it you want, but that's how it works. That's what it's doing. And then the whole recall and memory thing. Once we have pattern recognition and we decide what our preference is and we observe the pulse and the rhythm and we experience the potentiality of it because it's piqued our curiosity, and now we want to go flutter around in the overly fertilized field of imagination and wander in the wonder, the next thing you do is you tag that. It becomes a memory. It becomes something that you've thought about. It becomes something that you want to remember, something that you want to recall, something you want to experience again. And it's like we were talking, Jane, about the, and Gerald, you were mentioning how the idea of time travel is, all you got to do is think of a song that you grew up listening to, and depending on that song and that time, you can have an instant mind travel to that time.
Right.
So where does that come from? Where is that experience stored? What is that set of frequencies and vibrations that you are experiencing when that happens in your mind by hearing the sounds that you're listening to? Same thing happens with food, with smells, temperatures. Any one of these individual vibratory experiences can lead to a total recall, a trip down time travel lane.
Yep.
You can't program that. You can't put it in software or hardware because we can't even explain it. We can only experience it. Ooh. So, as we were talking about on the first part, one of the most important things that's being used very effectively and weaponized is language and the words. And this is another observational perspective on how the mind works with language. So, in my view, language is the operating system of the mind, because the words that you use, the meanings that are assigned to them, and the way that they're put together in sentences and in ideas and concepts and constructed will determine how your biology and how your etherium and your materium will respond and react. An example would be being a musician. I really resonate with playing guitar. So I am all of the words, all of the definitions around music and guitar. I want to know what those are because that's going to improve my experience as much as I can because it's adding more to my knowledge stack, right? So symbols, letters, sounds, words, information constructs, however they're put together, whichever ones you adopt from the myriad that are available across all kinds of different knowledge domains, is going to determine how you're going to function. Another example is as it relates to words that I think makes a lot of sense is the word student in the English language. And when we use the word student, it's typically attributed to someone who is focused on a particular knowledge domain, going through the acquisition of that knowledge, analyzing it, adapting it, and then being able to regurgitate it. And then once you reach that, you're kind of done. You get your stamped paper with your TLA attached to the ass end of your name, and off you go. The same word in kanji, the Japanese language, is ka, K-A. And so they would use, if they were translating our student into their language, they would use K-A, ka. However, they got a very different meaning of student. To them, student is a lifetime thing. Once you are in pursuit of learning something, you are always a student of it. It's not just going through a certain knowledge stack, a certain set of hurdles and requirements and within guardrails to say, okay, well, you have accomplished this. If you think about it, that's all a driver's license is. Driver's license says you can get behind a car and you can go through and you know how to navigate with everybody else is out there driving a car.
Right.
But if you're going to be a speed racer, if you're going to do sports or anything else, that's a whole nother level. So that's why language is really important. I think that people really need to pay more attention to the language that they use and adjust it where it needs to be adjusted. Because a lot of it's been polluted and mangled and manipulated. And it's not what it used to be or even should be. A la the example of artificial intelligence. Another one that's floating around in that space is machine learning. And oh my God, there's a bunch of really intelligent, learned people having scholarly debates and going on and on about the differences of what they think this is and that is. Just basically arguing or competing amongst themselves to figure out, see who can win. But it's all bullshit. Machines don't learn. They can't learn. Learning requires what I just went through. It requires a sentience, a consciousness. It requires a multi-dimensional, interdisciplinary set of information in order for the learning thing to actually occur. And until AI gets a memory, it's not going to learn shit. Because you need to remember what you learned to know that you learned it, right?
Yep.
Exactly.
So I'll go through this real quick. There needs to be a good refresher and reminder that the brain is not your consciousness. The mind is where your consciousness is. The brain is the neurological organ to the meat sack that we are Ubering in this iteration. It's just like the heart is a circulatory organ. So all the attempts and all of this, the neurology and the neurosciences and so forth, all they're doing is looking for the electrical signals that fire off in the gray matter that is designed to be an electrical signal generator and receiver. That's what it does. So that's why things like non-locality and all of these psychic abilities, clairvoyance, clairaudience, it was only a matter of time. All of those things are not understood by our official science models. They are dismissed as pseudoscience or anomalies or illusions of the mind. But that's completely the opposite of what's really happening. Psychic abilities are a nature and habit of consciousness. It's a part of what it is. Everybody's got it. Everybody can do it. And it's just like proclivities, talents, and skills in certain areas where some people are amazing artists, other people couldn't pull out a box of crayons. So there's fine-tuned, attenuated frequencies that people all have individually. And that's not being explored. It's being actually suppressed. So once that happens, then people will actually get into a reality that is going to be much more enjoyable and less frictionless, or with less friction. Okay, one of the things I think is really important that people don't realize is there's been a change in the way that we looked at this language of the mind and the way it's been categorized in the past. People have heard about alchemy. Well, that's now called chemistry. In fact, alchemy is kind of a dirty word. Astrology is now astronomy, and as we talked about earlier, astrology is like, yeah, there's a bunch of wackos. Herbalism has now become pharmaceuticals. The natural philosophy prior to the Enlightenment has become science, quantum and theoretical type physics, quantum mechanics. But then you have this whole category called mentalism. And that's where all the magic is. That's where all the real stuff is going on. But because it is looked down upon, even dismissed, and at a minimum discounted, but dismissed wholeheartedly by the scientific community, the authorities, the things like divination, which is what astrology, tarot, palm reading, scrying, I Ching, remote viewing, all of that has been around long before these blokes with doing all this science stuff. And the thing that has, I think, happened is we keep hearing a lot about people have been brainwashed. And I'd like to offer up a change up in that term, trying to be a little bit more accurate based on the observation, and that what's really happened is there's been brain staining that requires brain washing. So to me, it's another poor use of words to describe what's actually going on.
Right.
Let's see here. Okay.
Yeah, because once you put that seed into somebody that something's bad or whatever, then that's always in the back of somebody's mind, and it kind of taints the subject for people.
Well, yeah, and I was just looking at the chat. Moon at Noon said that the problem is that severe brain damage can also change who someone is. The mind has to be in the brain. The soul, on the other hand, is in every cell. I agree with that for the most part, but the brain damage is the biological interference in the interface, if that makes sense. And I like to use the example of savants, people who have severe disabilities that are just astronomically on another planet when it comes to a skill. I can't think of the guy, Stephen, he's out of England. Can't speak. He's got severe disabilities visually, but he can hear. He can't really talk that well. And I think it was at 6, he heard, I think it was a Bach piece, and heard it once, sat down at the piano and played it almost note for note perfectly without ever touching a piano before, without having obviously any lessons, and the
Wow.
first time hearing it. Okay. And Carolyn Corey has a documentary up on Amazon. I think it's called Superhuman, and highly recommend it. She goes through a number of different examples of how, in fact, she's got a whole a section in there where they teach kids to read books blindfolded.
Oh, wow.
So, to the point of Moon at Noon, yes, there can be a personality quirk or change as a result of the physical impairment of the biological system, but there's still a connection going on somewhere that is not explained in the biology. And I think that the damage to the biological system, what you see are the symptoms of that damage where the mind and the consciousness can't make the biology do what it wants. And you see this and hear about this with near-death experiences, people having out-of-body experiences, and so forth. So I hope that kind of made sense, Moon. Let me know if it did. So, wow, we are... I am droning right along, aren't I?
Yep.
I'll take that as...
We definitely need a part 3.
Yeah, because we haven't even gotten to the frequency thing yet. Let me load up a couple of those, and we can kind of prime it. Is there any comments on any of this so far? Any what are you talking
Moon,
about? Kind of.
Besides Moon, she asked previously that when you talked about everything vibrates, she wanted to know how it started, at the quantum level, or what started the vibration of everything.
Well,
I don't know if we can really answer that or not.
Well, the way I would answer within my model is that everything, because it exists, is already vibrating. There is no start to it. There's only the unfolding of it. So if consciousness is the reason that everything exists, from the way I see it, the nature and habit, and one of the attributes of consciousness is energy. Energy is expressed in an infinite field of frequencies. Those frequencies are then what manifest the etherium, the consciousness that we experience, and the materium, the biological experience that we have, the physical experience. So its nature is to vibrate. That's the way it waves. Everything waves. Everything is a vibration. So I don't think that there's any beginning. I think the Big Bang is just, it's a bunch of, again, math models, men and machines trying to come up with something to sound really important. And at the end of it, it's nothing but a bunch of mathematical concoctions based on somebody's formula of data that they've put into it, just like the AI thing. It's the same construct. It's all programmed and it's all defined by the mind of man. And you see that with the anthropocentric projection that we put on everything. But at the core base level, it's nothing but energy that vibrates in frequency sets that we happen to inhabit a certain set of. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so let's see. I don't know where I'm at. That's Aldous Huxley. So this is one of the reasons we have this problem, is that the way that the reductive mechanistic materialism works is they start with physics at the bottom. Everything starts with physics. That's where all the vibrations and the materium and light and sound and everything else starts in physics. And out of that construct comes chemistry. And then chemistry begats biology. Biology apparently begats psychology, which is that whole field has got all kinds of problems in it. But from the biology, consciousness emerges. So everything here is physical: physics, chemistry, and biology. Psychology is a poor way of observing how consciousness works. But apparently, through these three material things in a mechanistic, machine-based model, consciousness magically appears. It's like, but you can't explain it. Consciousness is known as and considered the hard problem in all sciences because nobody can define it. They can experience the hell out of it. It's just like electricity. We do not know what electricity is. We know how to harness it. We know how to generate it. We know that it's all over the place. And you could cook a man's meal with it, but you can also cook the man with it. But there's no agreed definition of electricity. They can't even agree on fields, on what a field is in the quantum worlds or any other disciplines.
Right.
So this is a big problem for the current science. It needs to be flipped. It needs to start with consciousness, and then you'll get your physics, your chemistry, biology, and psychology. Okay, frequency physics. We'll just spend about 10 minutes on this, and we'll be at the 2-hour mark, and I'm sorry for rambling on. So the frequency physics is the measurement of information that informs our framework of reality. And on one level, it kind of looks like this. There's waves within waves. There's different motion going on. Different colors used, smells, sounds. All of them have their own individual frequency working at the same time. Another perspective of how that might look. Kind of cool, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's all intermingled and kind of wrapped around itself.
That's how it is. There's cycles within cycles of individual frequency stamps, which is what we are, and our frequency stamps are interacting with one another. Even in the chat, it's the same thing. It's all an exchange and an interaction of energy. And it's the value that we all individually perceive and subjectively resonate with that's going on. And it's happening on multiple levels, multiple degrees, all at the same time.
That's a cool visual.
It's what, you'll like this, Jane, in music, it's what they call contrapuntal. Do you know that? Contrapuntal?
No.
No?
So contrapuntal means individual staves of the sheet of music, right?
Mm-hmm.
Violin, cello, trumpet, sax, whatever. All moving on their own line, but doing it together.
Okay.
So that's, to me, one way to describe how these frequencies are actually functioning. They're all doing their own thing on their own line, but they're all interacting and harmonizing or having discord, and that's what we experience.
Just like I have 3 or 4 singing bowls and I hit them, you can hear the individual notes, but when you hear them blend together, it's a totally different energy.
Exactly.
They blend together.
And sound healing is going to be one of the biggest healing modalities in the future. Sound and
Hallelujah.
light, in my opinion, because it's already here, but it's because it's outside the bounds of the current authorities that hold lord over the knowledge domains. The old guard has to be bulldozed out. Just come right out and say it. They got to go. Unless they decide to open their minds and get into it. Because the sound and resonance, the light and resonance, and the frequencies around both is what is the first expression of energy from consciousness. And
Okay.
that simple fundamental fact, in my opinion, and Tesla said it, right? Once science starts looking at the ether, that which they deny exists, they'll make more progress in 10 years than the last 100. And the ether is where sound and light are.
Oh yeah.
So that's the most fundamental construct of the way that it exists. And it's hard to deny it because we all experience it, but it's just a matter of whether you say, hey, I'm going to be aware of this or not.
Right.
So we'll end with this because this gets us into the start of the frequency discussion. These are the metrics in frequencies, the ones that we've been able to identify so far. So what we're showing in this is there's a grid across the top here. And all of the major frequency sections that we have been able to identify are identified in these groups. The rainbow tree looks like kind of like a Christmas tree with an infinity up there. It's one of the reasons I really like this. It's kind of cool. That rainbow tree is the frequency bands that we can actually experience without any toys, tools, or techniques, and we get the telemetry of these things with our own sensory systems.
Right.
But there's all this other stuff going on. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and this is showing the penetration from space. So the optical window from Earth is here on this grid, and it is only this small little section of this entire grid.
Oh my.
The stuff that the James Webb Space Telescope is finding, and why it's blowing away all of the current theories and models, is it's looking in this band right here, infrared. So infrared is why they're getting this incredible imagery and data sets that has already pushed the Big Bang back double. So once it gets down into here and we start looking at how all of the different frequencies manifest down here in the materium, the biology, because this is where we see the results of frequency and vibrations. You know, we've got the light and the sonic spectrum as well. But this is where our magic occurs. But interestingly enough, we can extend beyond this terrestrial experience, and we can have a celestial one, because the celestial is where all of the really cool stuff is. That's where everything originates. That's where the materium down here came from.
Okay.
And I'll leave you with this little observation. If you notice this grid,
Yeah.
Right.
what does that remind you of? It kind
Oh,
of looks
Bacon
like
radio.
Radio dial.
Exactly. So back to Moon's point, and what I was talking about as far as my reference of savants, there are frequencies that can be accessed if you figure out how to train yourself, your mind, and your consciousness to access. I think this is where the Akashic record kind of thing is. I think this is where clairvoyance and psychic experiences happen.
Mm-hmm.
Remote viewing, when they go look at a place and a time that is totally disconnected from reality, where they're at,
Yeah.
It's like they dial into the frequency.
Yeah. They're running on a
dial
different
into that-
frequency.
You just find that frequency and you dial into it.
Yep, you got to fine tune it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, once you realize this, then the journey becomes fascinating. It becomes, whoa, are you kidding me? I didn't know that that was something.
Yeah,
Yep.
I agree.
So, while we were supposed to talk about the frequencies and vibration, we just got to it. How about that? How'd that work?
That? I guess that just means there's going to be a part 3.
Yeah. We need to write them down.
Apparently, I just can't get through it all in one shot. But I mean, there's a lot here. I mean, this is something that I know is very different than the way people have been taught and the way they think. And hell, it's different than the way I thought and think, right?
Right. You have
mean,
to have
this
an
has
open
evolved.
mind.
It's evolved over a whole bunch of time. And in particular, in the last 4 or 5 years, it's been like a data dump. It just keeps adding more. And I'm going, do I have to add more? I thought I was done with this. And I just get more stuff. And the more I get, the more sense it makes, which is either scary good or scary bad. I'm not sure.
Right.
Well, we'll go ahead and just end it here. And next time, if we can have you back on, we'll start off at your frequency chart there and probably go forward, hopefully.
That one is going to be really cool because we get into the visuals and even some sonic stuff about what is it that going back to the point I was making earlier about light and sound are going to be the healing modality of choice in the future. A lot of people have referred to it as med beds or regen beds and so forth. And yes, bring it on, because the current way that the mechanistic model of going in and poking people and slicing them up and reattaching things is just wrong on so many reasons, on so many levels. And it has led to more illness and lack of well-being than it has been chartered to be responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
I was just watching a video the other day, actually, because it kind of reminded me of my father when he had a sonic bath to bust up his kidney stones way back in the day. They'd submerge you in the saline solution and send the sound waves through to break up the kidney stones. Well, the video I watched the other day is they're starting to use ultrasounds, like for when pregnant mothers would see their babies, and they're using sounds to go through the ultrasound, take care of and vibrate cancer cells to break them up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, sonograms and all of that have been around for a long time. Now they've got them in color and 3D. I mean, the CAT scans, the PET scans, MRIs. I mean, all of those technologies are just a bunch of frequency sets that they've designed a tool to go look at.
Yep.
And it's that simple, but again, they're looking at it from a machine perspective. They're looking at the body and going, well, it's like, okay, with this guy's rear fender here, he's got some problems. We're going to have to replace that. Put some, Bondo. We're going to Bondo that back end there because that's how we approach it. But when you look at traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, when on that one slide about herbology has now become pharmaceuticals, naturopathy and all of that plant medicine has been around a lot longer than anything else.
Yep.
And it's really good.
I have a whole closet full of herbal tinctures. I make my own medicine. That's
And
what the
so what are you
medicine
doing?
was back in the day. I mean, it was herbal tinctures. That's what the medicine man used. And He knew what, add this, add that, and that was a medicine back in the day.
Well, and you used to be able to to get cough syrup off of Sears and Roebuck. There was
Hmm.
cannabis, heroin, morphine,
Hmm.
and that was their main ingredients. It's like,
Yeah, and yeah,
okay, I could see how that worked.
Yeah, something
yeah.
there was going to make an effect.
He had cannabis tinctures back then. It was one of the main ingredients. You're right.
And hemp,
Hmm.
of the cannabis family, that strain, that the productivity that you can get out of that compared to the current model we're on, that's one of the reasons that hemp they went through the big prohibition, and made hemp and cannabis illegal, because you had these big titans like Weyerhaeuser who had tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars invested in these tree farms, and you can get a 4-to-1 output, hemp versus trees in an acre.
Right.
Well, that would have put his ass out of business. He would have lost a lot of money. So he was a part of. In fact, Woody Harrelson's got a really good documentary on the history of cannabis. I highly recommend as well. And he goes through that. I think the guy's name was Ainsley, that the government hired to go be the first, essentially, drug czar and go put the clamp on all these pot smoking jazz musicians, you know, because they had all these bad intent for women that weren't theirs and all this other stuff. I mean, they made this shit up to control the market by controlling the people.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's what we have seen in spades over the last 4 or 5 years. And the results of what they tried to do have been so pathetic that everybody's going, well, you think we need to get you replaced? Because your track record sucks, man. And here you had all these, plaques with stamped pieces of paper hung behind your desk. You clearly either didn't learn or what you learned was wrong. And I think that's the big issue. That's what people are starting to find out. What we've been told is like Lloyd Pye said in his ditty about 20 years ago, everything you've been told is wrong. It's all a lie. And that's the truth.
Yeah,
Our
it's a
history
plant.
is wrong.
It's a plant. It's an herb. It is not a drug. There's so much good uses out of it, and they made it into this almost like a psychedelic drug, and it just, they took away the true
I've been
meaning of it.
well, they had to weaponize it for
Yeah.
their own benefit. I've been a consummate cannabis connoisseur since the age of 13. And I was fortunate enough in the 90s, I had an office in Amsterdam. It was like,
Oh, there you go.
okay, now I grew up on the stuff in Southern California in the 70s, Meshwakan, and, occasionally we got some Colombian red and, Kona Gold and Oaxaca. And I mean, that was some great stuff. But now that they finally had to let loose because they realized that they couldn't control the narrative anymore and there was too many people clamoring for it. We need that same kind of activism and intent from the rest of humanity on all these other subjects. The pharmaceuticals, the whole medical industry, the science, the governance, the way things are administered and who's administering them, and the models they use. I mean, it's all outdated. It doesn't work anymore, and it can't be repaired. It needs to be replaced. So we've seen the Great Reset, the Great Rethink was one of mine. We're about to see the Great Replacement. You got to get rid of all this crap so that people can go about being self-actualized individuals that can go about and co-create with the freedom of being oneself with everybody else being oneself.
Right.
The individual collective is about to manifest. And I, for one, am glad I'm here to see it. And I'm going to go put my toes and fingers and I'm going to rub my face in it and get some.
There you go. Let's go ahead and tell everybody about your sites again, Robert, and then we'll have to schedule a part 3.
Well, I hate it when that happens. So the best way to find whatever I do is at robertbauer.com. My music, my philosophy, my voiceover, my podcasts, my technology are all can be found at robertbauer.com. And all of the social media and the platforms and everything can be found there as well. So that's the easiest way to find, and go poke at me and tell me I'm full of whatever, because I might just agree with you.
Well, this has been great. Thank you. I'm looking forward to part 3 because you know me, I'm in the vibrations, frequencies. I just want to learn more and more and more.
Well, there's plenty to go in there. I had plenty queued up, but old Ramblin' Robert had to go on a rant, and the next thing you know, it's like, whoa, you're out of time there, buddy. Your timeouts are gone, and the clock is out.
Well,
But thank
we'll
you
do
for
a
having me.
mulligan for next time.
Well, at least we know specifically what I'm going to get into this time, and it'll be real fine tuned there. But thank you both for allowing me to come in here and flap my yap and share this stuff, because I don't get to do it that often. Although I'm going to be doing it more with the next cast, which I'm kicking off, but I'm going to reborn that because there's just too many interesting things going on, like we talked about today.
Yep.
So
Yeah, well, thank
next
you
is
for
next.
sharing with our chat, and you know, and also you kept saying it's your opinion, is what you're learning. You're not going out and saying this is what it is. Well, I mean, we all need to learn for ourselves, you know, and just come with our own mind, with our own conclusions. But I appreciate this and let everybody dig and go, oh yeah, that does kind of make sense. So thank you very much.
Before we leave, Moon at Noon said she's going to put a comment after the show about how she learned about how everything was created about. So whether you want to reply to that, or maybe me and Jane
Oh
might
yeah,
jump
absolutely.
into it. And,
No, I love feedback, because I'm sitting here, just spewing what I've come up with. And again, like I keep saying, it's just my opinion and my observation. But as far as I can tell, I haven't seen anything that has given me any too much flack on it. As I've been able to absorb everything into the model, and it's like, okay, well, I can see how that works too, but that fits right here. So I'm on a quest to ask questions and find as many answers as I can, and do it without any restrictions, removing all of the predisposed filters and frameworks that have either been thrown at me, on me, or the ones that I've stuck in my own pockets. And so
Yeah.
I'm trying to be as self-examined as possible on this. And I got to tell you, it's a lot of fun too. I'm kind of wondering, am I doing this just because it's fun, or is there really something at the end of this road? So we'll see.
Well, we all need to realize everything that we've been taught, everything we've been told, our all lives has been a lie. We're relearning and we're doing it together. You know,
Hmm.
what our gut feels like. Okay, that just wasn't right all those years. Our minds are opening up. Keep our energy and frequency up. The more, and we're going to learn more. So we just got to relearn.
Yeah, the thing to me about frequency and vibration is to be aware of what it is as much as possible.
Yeah.
As I was saying at the beginning, a lot of what is currently discussed and shared and experienced on frequency and vibration, I think is a lot of it's good, but it's very surface level. If the understanding of how it actually functions and where it comes from was added to that
Mhm.
unique expression of that frequency set, I think you can get a lot more out of it.
Mhm.
So because there's too many different definitions and too many different delineations, it's like, no, wait a minute, just look at how it works. Forget about what it's called and who calls it what and defines it as such. It's like the whole thing about God. What is God? God is this to you, and God is that to them, and God is an incorporeal being, but he looks like a dude and he's got a long beard sitting on a cloud.
That can be another
It's
whole
like,
show.
no, you got to get rid of all that shit and get rid of all the stuff that's been put on
Right.
the reality that we inhabit. Just strip it out and just look at what's there. How does it work? And that's all I'm trying to do with Informatica is figure out how is it expressing itself? What are its attributes, its characteristics, its nature, its habits?
Right.
Because that's where the real stuff is. And then you can build out from there.
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
right now there's too many roadblocks, there's too many guardrails, there's too many silos that people have declared ownership of said knowledge, and therefore this is the stamp that it fits in. That's
Right.
bullshit, because it's all been proven to be bullshit because the track record, as we've said ad nauseum, is shit the last few years. So apparently everything's up for grabs, in my opinion, and I'm going to go out and push it around and see what I can come up with. Just like everybody should. It should be
Right.
the most important thing you do is to try to figure out how the reality you inhabit works and ask as many questions as you can
Yeah.
as you quest your way through the journey.
And don't be judgmental or opinionated. Just have an open mind and just go, well, that could be, just give everything a chance. We just need to relearn everything.
Don't open your mind and be acceptable to all this, then all of a sudden close your mind off again. You got
Yeah.
to continually learn and expand. And
Don't stop at one level of vibration. We got to keep higher.
You know that I do a show with a friend of mine, Scotty Roberts, and he's a graphic artist, written a lot of books, and has done a lot on archaeology. And I keep telling him, we have a little debate going on the carvings over at Abydos, where it shows the helicopter and looks like a helicopter and a boat and stuff. And he keeps telling me that, well, that's actually the mainstream is the right answer. It flaked off, and then they kind of put some stuff back together. And I look at it and go, no, no, I don't see that at all. I see a very deliberate carving of, yeah, but there's evidence of when they've found some. And I said, no, somebody had a vision and put those things in there. But and when we have a real friendly debate, it's funny as hell. But I keep telling him that we are one turn of the spade of dirt from discovering something that's going to completely change everything. So to me, you've got to take your spade in and you got to put it in the dirt of knowledge, and you got to dig through there yourself, and you got to look and see what you come up with. Because you're most likely, based on, again, the available data, you're most likely going to find out that a lot of the stuff that you thought was real ain't. A lot of the stuff you thought was true is exactly the opposite. And you're going to discover more about yourself that you were told not to.
right. Yeah.
And that is where the self-actualization of the independent self is the magic of the journey. That's where all of the cool stuff happens. And what I think we're about to see in the future here, not too far off. So I'm kind of excited. Maybe that's one of the reasons I keep pushing down this path. It's like, well, there's got to be more in here because I keep digging and turning up more stuff. And you guys are more than gracious to let me come on and talk and share this with you and your audience. And you're just, you guys you're getting it too, which is really, it's a bonus for me. I'm like, wait a minute. They're getting it.
I've had thoughts like this. Well, actually, ever since we left the church organization about 13 years ago, I just went, okay, God, show me the truth. Just show me the truth that a lot of this stuff just opened up. And yeah, I'm on a journey, and I do understand it's more than what we were taught. Plus, they were taught by universities. It's a control issue that they had to teach what they were taught in the seminaries. And we just need to have an individual walk and learn for ourselves and just open up to a lot of this.
And unfortunately, it's it's a scary thing to do. If you're going to go explore knowledge and learn something, and with the knowing that the possibility and maybe even probability that you're going to find stuff that's going to turn your world upside down, it's kind of scary. It's a lot easier to go sit on the couch naked eating Cheetos.
Right.
So, I mean, it's effort. It is an intent. You have to have a purpose. You have to approach it with a purpose that you want to get the most out of this experience as you can. You can choose not to. That everybody's got a choice, and that goes back to the whole free will thing. You know, I've seen these people arguing about. I listened to a guy who's some old scholarly dude that is like a big time professor argue that there is no free will, that it's some kind of illusory construct that goes on in the brain. And I'm going, wait a minute. My free will says that I'm going to tell you that you're full of shit. So tell me how I'm not exercising free will. But it was on a video. Theory of Everything, another great YouTube channel. Kurt Parmesanal, I think, and I probably butchered his last name, but Theory of Everything channel on YouTube. Great, does a great dive into really deep topics. But he was interviewing this guy, and you could see Kurt's face. He's like, he's listening to him. He's going, I'm starting to get the RCA dog thing going on. And
yeah.
And I was listening to it doing the dishes, and I kept turning over and looking at my phone going, did you just say that? So I had to jump in the comments and just say, hey, this guy is missing this, and this. But we are seeing more and more of that as these content creators are finding a voice. They're finding the opportunity. They're finding that their curiosity and their intent and their imagination now have a way to go search more, to go learn more, to go find more. When they unleashed the internet, I don't think they thought it would get away from them the way it did.
Yeah.
But it has. And they can't control that anymore. So, self-actualization of the individual is the most important thing that people can do, in my opinion. Do that self-examination. Try to figure out what it is that really makes you who you are. What makes you tick? What do you vibrate with? What are the frequencies that make up your frequency stamp?
Yep.
Very simple, subtle things that will open up an entire world of even more of the reality than we currently are boxed in. And
that goes along with
again,
that goes along with my saying, life is like a buffet line, eat off your own plate. Focus on your plate and your walk and what makes you tick. Stop looking at everyone else and what they're choosing and what focus on your frequency. Just leave everybody else's alone. They're on their own journey.
And then that's the thing. If you're competing with anything, it's better be yourself.
Yep.
Right? You can aspire. You can have great characteristics and examples that you can use for motivation. But at the end of it, you're going to be your own. And that's what you want to be, is your own. But again, that's scary, and it takes some work, and a lot of people are, just comfortable with their Cheetos on the couch. That's okay. This isn't everybody's time, and you have to allow for that. It's kind of like what Morpheus said to Neo in The Matrix, when Neo was going to go into the big vat of all of the little incubators, and Morpheus said, just remember when you go in there, not everyone wants to be unplugged. And not only do they not want to be unplugged, they will fight to stay plugged.
Right.
So you have to be aware that that's also a part of the reality. It's a part of the populace of the sleeple, that we are all sharing this common band of consciousness and reality with. And that's okay. That's another reason why you really need, before you help anyone else, before you love anyone else, you got to help yourself and you got to love yourself. Because if you don't do that, there's not going to be anything of you left to give to anyone else. And And they're going to be disappointed. It's kind of like putting lipstick on a pig. Everybody's going to be disappointed because you didn't have enough of you to give to whatever it was or whoever it was that you're trying to give to. So people used to refer to that as being selfish. I call it being selfness, being aware of and making sure that you are aware of self and you're taking care of self. Because if you don't do that, everybody else who's going to be dependent on you is going to be real disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all I can say
And you're
is
going to be
there's an
disappointed
awful
too.
lot of kicking and screaming going on with Cheeto stained hand marks dragging across the floor. One way or another, they're going.
I've always admired the guys that would come into the store and just have Cheeto dust on their shirt. It's like, well, I got to give you credit. You're committed.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and say our goodbyes, and we've almost made it to 2.5 hours now.
Oh, God. I'm sorry.
No,
okay.
don't be sorry. That's fine.
Well, thanks everybody that's been in chat. We love you all, and thanks for coming in. And the few questions I was able to bring up and get to, we planned on having a question and answering, but we just never really got to it. I'm sorry. We'll try better next show.
My fault.
So stay tuned. There'll be a part 3, hopefully coming up here in a month or so, or whenever we can get together with Robert and have the part 3.
Looking forward to it, and gratitude to everyone. Thank you.
All right. We will see everybody probably Wednesday night for our chat night and hang out with everybody.
Yep. So keep looking up, everybody. Love and peace to you, and do something kind for somebody else, and raise your
Love ya.
vibrations.
Yep. Raise your vibrations.
All right. Love you all.
All right.
Bye.